The first act of Al-Qaeda was the assassination of Rabbi Meir Kahane in November 1990. The Al-Qaeda Muslim Nazi terrorists stated that they felt that they had to get Rabbi Kahane out of the way before they started their campaign of mass murder. And so they murdered Rabbi Kahane in New York in November 1990. And why did they feel they had to get Rabbi Kahane out of the way? Because he was a voice of truth and clarity and integrity, who was exposing a truth that no one else was willing to expose. And so El Sayed Nosser, Yimach Shmo, who was the murderer, who was the actual trigger man in the murder of Rabbi Kahane, stated that Rabbi Kahane was the big Jew, and that because he was the big Jew, they had to get the big Jew out of the way before they could start their campaign of mass murder. If the FBI and the police had taken the murder of Rabbi Kahane seriously, if they had decided to prosecute the murderers of Rabbi Meir Kahane, if they had decided to do that, 9/11 could have been avoided, because they ignored the murder of Rabbi Kahane. And I was in touch, by the way, with the head of the FBI terrorist task force. I was in touch with all of the key FBI special agents when this was taking place. They ignored it because of anti-Semitism, and they ignored it because they didn't like Rabbi Kahane, and so they allowed the Muslim terrorists to get away with murdering Rabbi Kahane. Because they did that, the same Muslim terrorists who murdered Rabbi Kahane went on to bomb the World Trade Center the first time in 1993, murdering 6 people and causing $1 billion worth of damage. And then after that, the continuing policy of appeasement that we saw eventually led to 9/11 occurring in 2001.
What's the metaphor then for the war against Israel that the rest of the world sees as just about one Arab against one Jew?
The metaphor is that when they're coming after Israel, they're going to come after you very soon. Eventually, they're going to come after you as well. That's the metaphor. They murdered Rabbi Kahane, and we warned them that this was going to lead to mass murder. We warned them that this was going to lead to catastrophe. In 1994, on September 11th, 1994, a program aired on cable television in New York that I did. A program aired where I warned that the people who carried out the first bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993 would return, and this time they would bring down the Twin Towers. I warned this was going to happen. I warned repeatedly on television this was going to happen, and it was all ignored. I met with top FBI officials and top FBI special agents. They ignored all the warnings. They ignored all the warning signs. The question is, now we're warning that nations like Iran are developing nuclear bombs, that they want to use weapons of mass destruction. Are they going to ignore these warnings too? Are they also going to refuse to take action against this very grave danger to the survival of millions of people? That's really the great question of our day in terms of Islamic terrorism.
Is this a war about the U.S. pulling out of Afghanistan? Is that going to end the global terror war?
The U.S., I don't think the U.S. being in Afghanistan is even relevant to the war on terrorism. Afghanistan is not the problem. Iraq is not the problem. The problem is Iran. That's where the problem is. And Barack Hussein Obama is never going to take action against his Muslim brothers in Iran. He's just not going to do that. And that's why he's pressuring Israel to sit back and allow the Iranians to build that nuclear bomb. The Israelis want to attack Iran now. And Barack Hussein Obama is pressuring them not to do it. It's crazy that they're giving in to his pressure. If I were the Prime Minister of Israel, I wouldn't care what he says. I would go and do it. But they're giving in to his pressure. And that is insane. And that is one of the root causes of the problem. We must never allow Islamic terrorist states to develop weapons of mass destruction, certainly not nuclear bombs. It's complete insanity.
And by Obama not stopping Israel from doing it, is he allowing that?
Of course, he's enabling the Iranians to build the nuclear bombs by doing that. He's enabling the Iranians to develop the means to carry out their dream of murdering millions of non-Muslim infidels. That's their dream.
Which is us?
Yes. The target would be Israel or the United States. Either Israel or the United States. Either one.
Severing our support for Israel lessen terror against America?
Of course not. Of course not. The United States is the world's biggest and most powerful non-Muslim nation, and it's an obstacle to global jihad. That is why there's a war against the United States. Of course not. Of course not. First of all, the United States I'm against foreign aid to Israel. The United States should cut off all foreign aid to Israel immediately. Israel should become independent immediately.
Right.
Because foreign aid to Israel creates an unhealthy addiction and dependence to the United States. Israel should have an independent foreign policy. Israel should have an independent military. Israel should have an independent economy. And Israel is extremely capable of achieving all of those things. But as long as we have this addiction of foreign aid, which is, by the way, America gives Israel $3 billion a year. $3 billion a year is 4% of Israel's national budget. You mean Israel can't survive without 4% of their budget? Netanyahu, when he was Treasury Minister, cut more than 4% of the budget in Israel already. So Israel can clearly survive without it, and it would be the best thing. Giving drugs to a drug addict does not help the drug addict. Giving welfare to a welfare recipient does not help the welfare recipient. What they're doing with Israel is harmful to Israel. Israel must be independent. Am levadad yishkon. This is a nation that shall dwell alone and not be reckoned among the nations, it says in the Torah. When we're alone and when we're isolated, that's when we're strongest. That is actually when we're strongest. In 1967, before the Six-Day War, America told Israel not to strike first. America told Israel not to defend herself. The French threatened to cut off all relations with Israel. The Soviets and the communist countries did cut off all relations with Israel. The whole world was pressuring Israel to commit national suicide and not strike first in 1967. Israel ignored the world, ignored Lyndon Johnson's threats, and Lyndon Johnson, by the way, punished Israel after that with a 130-day arms embargo. Israel ignored America's pressure, ignored Soviet pressure, ignored UN pressure, ignored French and European pressure, and struck and won the biggest victory in thousands of years, the biggest and most miraculous victory in thousands of years for the Jewish people in 1967. When Israel goes alone and resists pressure and is independent, Israel wins big victories.
Should America simultaneously cut foreign aid to the Jordan and Egypt, or will that bring in Islamism?
America should cut all foreign aid. There should be no foreign aid anymore. There should be an end to all foreign aid for Israel, for Arab countries, for everybody.
Pakistan?
Certainly for Pakistan. Pakistan is an example of a Muslim country with nuclear weapons. Thankfully, India is sitting on their border there. If not for that, they would be using them against us. But Pakistan is a Muslim country with nuclear weapons that sponsors terrorism. It's complete insanity. And they were giving refuge to Osama bin Laden. I mean, it's a known fact that they were giving refuge, and it's all being covered up. I mean, he was living in a mansion 1 mile away from the main army base in Pakistan. Everybody knew that he was there. Everybody knew he was in Pakistan all of these years since 9/11. And the United States gives them tens of billions of dollars in aid? This is insanity.
Do you think it's time for another change in Washington?
Oh, I think there's an urgent need for another change. Unfortunately, the Republican candidates all stink too, but certainly they're better than Barack Hussein Obama. And so absolutely he should be voted out.